Anthelmintics are an important component of worm control for many sheep farmers. However, the sustainability and cost effectiveness of their use is threatened by rising parasite resistance to those drenches. There's a common perception that the use of long-acting drenches in adult ewes around lambing time provides production benefits for both ewes and their lambs. But that practice may in fact be contributing to resistance developing. About 6 years ago, Dave Leithwick from AgResearch convened a meeting in Eketahuna to talk to some farmers about this issue. A 2-year trial was subsequently funded on 8 commercial sheep and beef farms, looking at the efficacy and cost effectiveness of long-acting drenches.
We ran a total of 14 studies, so there was 8 farms did the first year and 6 of those farms did the second year. So we had some data on farm-to-farm variation, and we had data on the differences between seasons on a given farm. So we were able to look at some of those variables. And basically, we had an underpinning experiment that ran through all of them, which was a comparison of capsule-treated ewes, untreated ewes, and ewes supplemented with selenium and cobalt with a treatment that was designed to mimic the minerals in the drench capsule. So we were able to say, this response is due to worm control, this response is due to minerals. So that was an underlying theme all the way through. There was a subset of the farms that did a whole lot of other options that looked at benzimidazole capsule, the extender, the long-acting moxidectin injection, and they had an oral drench at docking or an oral drench at pre-lamb. So all those options were covered, and we've got data on all of them. In terms of measurements, we did live weights, body condition score, DAG score, and we did that at the time of treatment, at weaning, and we had 2 measurements after weaning that took us through to mating. The quandary's been for a long time that these long-acting products are very popular and a lot of people use them, and there's a perception that they're well worthwhile and you get a good return on them. At the same time, we've been telling farmers for the last 10 or 15 years that if you keep doing this, they're high risk for getting drug resistance, and so we wanted them to try and wean themselves off them because long term it's detrimental. And so, but in fact the data, the evidence for production there's almost none. If you ignore all the glossy brochures and the advertising by people selling product, there's almost no data existing as to what the real benefits are, and that was sort of like the basis of where we started from. As a scientist whose focus is on preventing or managing the development of drug resistance, then long-actings are not a good thing, and we would never recommend them, never have. There's a whole host of technical reasons why you would take that position, but we would never promote the use of long-acting products.
That graph on its own.
The consultant involved, Chris Garland, he did a full economic analysis in discussion with the farmers that were involved. So they did a full economic analysis on the cost benefit of using a whole range of products in sheep, replicated over a whole range of farms in this area. And the end result was that roughly 50% of the farms, of the treatments that were given to mobs or ewes, resulted in a net financial loss. So not that there was only a small economic return, there was in fact an economic loss. And sometimes those financial losses were quite significant. There was lots of money. And so that was somewhat of an unexpected result because we thought that they might not make a lot of money, but we didn't think they were going to lose money. And the other really striking thing about it was the amount of variability in that the results were highly unpredictable. So some farms made a lot of money, some lost a lot of money, some made no money at all. And this was almost universal across all the drench treatments, which makes life a bit challenging in terms of trying to interpret it. So that, if you like, that was the final outcome, was that all the advertising and all the guff that you see about consistent trends and benefits, we didn't see any of it. It was much more variable and highly unpredictable. In terms of the long-acting drenches, there was a fairly consistent trend for ewes to be heavier at weaning after treatment, which is what most farmers would tell you they see. What was interesting was that we then followed those ewes through to mating, and The weight advantage at weaning was reduced, and so if you're doing your sums for your cost benefit and you use weaning weights as your measure of reproductive advantage at mating, that's actually wrong. In some of the trials, which was again unexpected, was a significant part of the response was due to the minerals in the drench and not to the drench itself. What we were measuring was not just a worm effect, it was a worm and trace element effect. Over the whole experiment, which was about 2,500 ewes that had been treated with capsules or long-acting drenches, on average weaned about 2.5% fewer lambs. So while farmers can see that the ewes look a bit better and their lambs look a bit better, what they can't see is that there's actually fewer of them. And that was what drove the economics. We can't explain that based on the results we've got, but it's certainly an area that we're interested in pursuing, and we'll be looking for some funding to go further in that area.
We've got 4,000 breeding ewes and a couple of hundred head of cattle, and we just finished all produce here. It's 660 hectares of medium to steep hill country. Well, we went to that meeting in Ekahuna and we talked about it, and they obviously asked for some farmers to be volunteers, and I thought, well, best way to get all the info is to be part of it, so we put our hand up and said that we'd do it for 2 years. It was a bit of extra work, particularly at lambing time, when we had to tag all the lambs at birth. In the setting up, we submitted about 500 mixed-age ewes that were all scanned and lamb with twins, and then we randomly picked about 300 of those out and just randomly tagged them, and that's how they ended up in their groups. And from there, the trial will start. Even number of ewes in each paddock, so that keep the environment right. There was no singles or no triplets in it, just to try and keep it as even as we could. All the farms were the same. Traditionally here, we've only really dealt to the bottom sort of 1 to 5% of our ewes pre-lambing with drench treatments. So that was my main question, was were we missing out on something financially by not doing the whole flock? So, and as it turned out, we weren't. So that was probably reinforced what we were doing, that give us the confidence going forward.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.